Approximately 37 to 40% of American adults cannot cover a $400 emergency from their savings without borrowing money or selling something. And the majority of those people are not poor. They earn median incomes. Some earn well above median, and they are still broke. This is not an income problem. The research is clear on this. Income level beyond a basic sufficiency threshold is a remarkably weak predictor of whether someone actually builds savings. What predicts savings success is something almost no one talks about: a structural error in the sequence of decisions that most people make automatically, every single month, without ever realizing it is there. This video explains that error, why it persists regardless of how much you earn, and the 10-minute structural fix that removes it permanently. The sequencing error works like this. Most people receive their paycheck and follow an implicit mental order that feels completely logical. Pay the rent or mortgage first, cover utilities and subscriptions, buy food, handle debt payments, deal with whatever unexpected cost came up this month, spend on lifestyle and the things that make the month livable. And then, if anything is left over at the end, put the remainder into savings. The problem is not that this sequence is irresponsible. The problem is that it is structurally guaranteed to leave nothing at the end, not because the expenses are too high, but because spending naturally expands to fill whatever funds are perceived as available. Behavioral economists call this income-consumption coupling, the well-documented tendency for consumption to rise proportionally with perceived available income, regardless of what the actual income level is. This is why the savings problem does not disappear as salaries increase. When a person earning $40,000 gets a raise to $60,000, they do not typically save the extra $20,000. They expand their lifestyle to consume it, and then wonder why they are still living paycheck to paycheck at the higher income level. The money available grows. The money saved stays near zero, because the sequence of decisions has not changed. The foundational research explaining why this happens comes from behavioral economists Richard Thaler and Hersh Shefrin, who demonstrated in foundational work in the 1980 that people do not treat money as fungible, as interchangeable regardless of its source or mental category. Instead, the brain sorts money into what Thaler and Shefrin called mental accounts, and applies completely different behavioral rules depending on which account a given sum of money is perceived as belonging to. Money the brain categorizes as available income is treated as spendable. Money the brain categorizes as already saved is treated as untouchable, not because of any rational decision, but because of how the mental categorization triggers different behavioral rules. The critical insight is that this transition from available income to already saved does not happen automatically. It requires a deliberate structural intervention to force it, because the brain's default categorization will always place incoming money in the available bucket unless something actively redirects it before spending logic claims it. This is the entire theoretical foundation behind the principle known as pay yourself first. The principle is simple to state. Savings should be treated as a non-negotiable fixed expense, removed from the income stream automatically, at the moment income arrives, before any discretionary spending can occur. By transferring money to savings the instant a paycheck deposits, before the account holder has seen it, before the brain has processed it as available income, before any spending decision has been made, you are changing which mental account the money belongs to before the brain's default logic has a chance to claim it. The key word in that principle is automatic. Manual savings transfers, deciding each month how much to move and then executing the transfer yourself, are psychologically unreliable, and the research explains exactly why. Decision fatigue is a well-documented phenomenon. Financial willpower is a depleting resource, not a fixed one. The more micro-decisions a person is required to make about money throughout a month, the more likely they are to make impulsive and short-sighted decisions by the end of that cycle. A savings strategy that depends on a deliberate monthly decision will be undermined by decision fatigue, by competing immediate expenses that feel more urgent, and by the optimism bias that leads almost everyone to consistently overestimate how much discretionary income will remain at the end of the month. The optimism bias in financial planning is not a character flaw. It is a documented cognitive tendency. People systematically predict that next month will be the month the unexpected costs don't appear, that the discretionary spending will be lower, that the margin will finally be there. Next month almost never behaves differently from this month, because the structure of the decisions has not changed. Automation bypasses all of these vulnerabilities in a single move. The most striking evidence of how powerful automation is comes from employer-based retirement savings research. When retirement contribution programs were structured as opt-in, meaning an employee had to take a deliberate positive action to start saving, participation rates typically sat around 40 to 50%. When the same programs switched to opt-out enrollment, with automatic contributions beginning on day one of employment and requiring a deliberate action to stop, participation rates rose to 85 to 95%. The financial incentives were identical in both cases. The contribution amounts were identical. The only thing that changed was the default, whether the automatic behavior was saving or not saving. That single structural change nearly doubled the savings participation rate, with no change in any other variable. This is what automatic savings does. It converts saving from a decision that has to be made and remade under conditions of fatigue, optimism bias, and competing demands, into a default behavior that happens without any decision at all. The practical implementation of this fix requires approximately 10 minutes of setup, and then runs indefinitely without further decision-making or willpower expenditure. The first step is to open a separate savings account, ideally at a different bank from your primary checking account. Physical separation matters here. When savings are at the same institution as checking, the friction of transferring money back is near zero, which means the savings are psychologically accessible and therefore psychologically spendable. Moving the savings to a different bank adds a small but meaningful barrier that reinforces the mental account separation the system depends on. High-yield savings accounts at online banks currently offer interest rates significantly above the near-zero rates at traditional brick-and-mortar institutions. So the separation also puts the money to better use while it sits. The second step is to calculate a fixed transfer amount, not a percentage you aspire to, but a number you can actually sustain from the first month. The conventional wisdom of saving 10 to 20% of net income is aspirational for someone starting from zero. And research on savings habit formation consistently shows that setting an ambitious target that triggers immediate sacrifice aversion is less effective than starting small and building. Even 2 to 5% of net income, automated from day one, creates the behavioral habit, demonstrates that the lifestyle adjustment is survivable, and builds the account balance that makes future increases feel earned rather than punishing. The third step, and this is the structural detail that most people get wrong, is to set the automatic transfer to execute the day after your paycheck clears. Not at the end of the month, not on a memorable calendar date. The day after income arrives. That timing means the money is redirected before the brain's spending logic has had any opportunity to process it as available. The earlier in the paycheck cycle the transfer happens, the less psychologically available the money ever feels. And the less psychologically available it feels, the less likely it is to be spent. The fourth step is to treat the savings account balance as invisible for 90 days. The human brain adapts to reduced available funds within approximately one full budget cycle. The first month of a new automatic savings arrangement typically feels tight because the brain is still comparing the new available balance to the old one. By the second month, spending patterns have compressed to fit the new reality, and the tightness largely disappears because the brain has recalibrated its sense of what normal, available income looks like. After 90 days, most people cannot clearly identify where the saved money came from in their monthly spending, because the adjustment happened gradually and automatically rather than through a series of painful conscious sacrifices. The fifth step is the one that determines whether this system builds real wealth over time or simply provides a modest buffer. Pre-commit to increasing the transfer amount by the same percentage as every pay raise you receive. This strategy, sometimes called saving your raises before you spend them, is one of the most powerful long-term wealth-building behaviors documented in savings research. When a salary increase arrives, the lifestyle upgrade has not yet happened. The new spending baseline has not yet been established, and redirecting the additional income to savings requires no subjective sacrifice because nothing has yet been given up. Allowing lifestyle inflation to absorb every pay raise instead, which is the default behavior for most people, is the mechanism through which income growth fails to produce wealth growth across a working lifetime. The scale of the problem this system addresses is measurable in the Federal Reserve's own data. The Fed's report on the economic well-being of U.S. Households has repeatedly found, across multiple survey years, that approximately 37 to 40% of American adults could not cover a $400 emergency from savings. This figure has persisted across periods of economic growth, across rising median wages, and across households at a wide range of income levels, not just among the very poor. A separate body of research on retirement preparedness shows that the median retirement savings balance for Americans approaching retirement age is far below what financial planners consider adequate for a sustainable retirement, with millions of workers in their 50s and 60s holding total retirement savings equivalent to only a few years of living expenses. The consistent conclusion across all of this research is the same. Income level does not determine saving success. What determines saving success is the presence or absence of automatic structural mechanisms that remove money from the available spending pool before spending patterns can claim it. The 10-minute fix is not sophisticated. It does not require a financial advisor, a complex investment strategy, or a deep understanding of markets. It works precisely because it works around human behavioral tendencies rather than against them. Because it removes the decisions that human psychology is poorly equipped to make reliably under real-world conditions, and replaces them with a structure that produces the right outcome automatically. If you want to understand what happens after the savings account is built, how to make the money inside it actually grow rather than simply accumulate, that is exactly what the next video on this channel covers. The framework there picks up directly where this one ends, and it is the natural next step.